But joining me now with her biggest takeaways is Fox News Sunday anchor Shannon Bream. Shannon, like the D.C. Bureau, you've been spending time over the last roughly 1 hour going through these documents. What's your biggest takeaway?
Well, it's really the idea that she was the primary one in a lot of these big relationships. There's always been a conversation about Trump and Epstein, Clinton and Epstein. She wanted to make very clear in these interviews that she was the point of contact when it came to President Clinton, that she had the friendship with Clinton. And it was only because of that that Epstein had this secondary relationship with Clinton. So we know that her background and her connections with her father and to many movers and shakers, she may have been the conduit. It wasn't that that was the primary relationship. She was the primary relationship. Wanted to make that clear. She does say in many instances, never saw anything inappropriate with Clinton. He never went to the island, never saw anything inappropriate with Trump. We wondered why this came out this afternoon. A Friday afternoon dump usually means that you're trying to hide something. And maybe it was that the DOJ didn't get the big payoff that they were hoping they might get from her. Maybe it was to say, look, we're giving you as much as we can. We're making an effort at getting you Epstein information. After the third judge this week said, you're not going to get the grand jury testimony. So there's still a lot to sift through, but it doesn't appear there's any smoking gun. I got to say, one of the last little bits that colleagues sent out talked about that she never saw anything inappropriate during the massages or the touching between men and women of any ages, which that then begs her credibility because, you know, there are plenty of allegations that she did see something along those lines.
Okay, credibility is something I want to follow up with you on, Shannon. In the coming segments here today, we're going to dig into a little more of who was Ghislaine Maxwell, who was her father. And she spoke on the record to the Deputy Attorney General, Todd Blanche, about her father, about his connections to intelligence, about Jeffrey Epstein's potential connections to intelligence. We're going to get into that in just a moment. But let's start, Shannon, answering some of the questions that everyone is asking. You and Rich Edson have begun that process. People ask about President Trump. People ask about Bill Clinton. And they often ask about a list. Where is the client list? Todd Blanche asked Ghislaine Maxwell about that list. Let's listen.
During the time that you were with Mr. Epstein, and even in the 2000s when you were around less frequently, you never observed or you never saw any sort of list or black book or a list of individuals who linked to certain masseuses or
Absolutely
anything
no.
like that?
Absolutely no. There is no list.
Shannon, I think there has always been a legitimate question about what type of criminal actually maintains a black book or what type of criminal actually maintains a list. Would that be in a Word document? Would it literally be in a little black book? Do you find her credible when she says absolutely not, there is no list?
Well, I take that in conjunction with a conversation I had with Alan Dershowitz, who once served as one of the attorneys for Jeffrey Epstein. He told me the same thing. There was no formal list. And he echoes a lot of what she said as well, that he never saw anything that would implicate President Trump in anything that was untoward or unethical or criminal. But he said, too, like, you wouldn't expect somebody is going to keep a ledger and notes and that kind of thing. And in representing Mr. Epstein, he, too, said that there was never any formal client list or anything like that that you could point to.
All right, and as to the point of her credibility, which you brought up, Shannon, Ghislaine Maxwell, there's not right now any smoking gun inside of these documents. Does she have any incentive to be completely forthcoming? Or is there incentive for her, perhaps in seeking a pardon, to not share the truth? What do you make of her credibility?
And that's the question people are going to have. She's a convicted felon. And so how much do you rely on the testimony that she's providing? I mean, that's one of the number one questions that her critics are going to have. How much does the DOJ or any entity that is a law enforcement entity rely on the testimony of somebody who's a convicted felon? So like I said, that last little tidbit that's been unearthed where she says, I never saw any bad behavior with any of these men. Now, maybe she said something to the effect, I might have a different interpretation of that if somebody's getting handsy, that kind of thing. But I didn't see anything with any inappropriate people, male or female. I just didn't see it. So that then starts to flag for a lot of people a credibility issue, because we are told from victims all over the place, I mean, dozens of them, that there were years of this stuff and that she was, by their allegation, implicit and aware of what was going on.
Okay. Shannon Bream, thank you. Hey, it's Will Cain. Click here to subscribe to the Fox News channel on YouTube. It's the best way to get our latest interviews and highlights. And click to subscribe to the Will Cain podcast for full episodes right now.